The fluorescent lights in the 24-hour laundromat buzzed like dying insects. Elena Volkov sat on a cracked plastic chair at 2 a.m, watching her clothes tumble through sudsy water, trying not to calculate how much this load was costing her. $3.50. That was half a meal. But she'd needed clean clothes for tomorrow's job interview at the law firm downtown, and her apartment building's machines had been broken for 3 weeks. She pulled out her battered laptop, the one with the cracked screen she'd bought refurbished 4 years ago, and opened the translation file she'd been working on. Medical documents, Russian to English. The client was paying $40, due by morning. $40 meant groceries for the week, maybe even a small cushion against the constant, gnawing fear of not having enough. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. Elena's fingers flew across the keyboard, her dark blonde hair falling forward as she hunched over the screen. She'd learned Russian from her grandmother, the only family member who'd bothered with her after her parents died. Learned it sitting in a cramped Brooklyn apartment, eating piroshki and listening to stories about the old country. Then she'd taught herself Spanish in high school, French in community college, and Italian from YouTube videos while working overnight shifts at a diner. Languages were free. All they required was time and determination, 2 things she'd had in abundance while clawing her way through life. The laundromat door chimed. Elena glanced up reflexively, her city survival instincts cataloging the new arrival. Man, late 30s, expensive charcoal coat that looked wrong in this neighborhood, dark hair, strong jaw, and eyes that swept the space like he was assessing threats. Behind him, another man, broader, with the unmistakable bearing of a bodyguard. They didn't belong here. Men in $1,000 coats didn't do laundry in Sunset Park at 2 a.m. Elena returned her attention to her laptop, typing faster. Not her business. She'd learned that lesson early in New York. Keep your head down, stay invisible, survive. We need to find someplace open, the first man said, his voice carrying an accent she immediately recognized. Italian, northern region, educated. Somewhere we can talk privately. Boss, everything's closed. We should head back to the... No, not until this is handled. The Italian man's voice carried absolute authority. The deal with Kozlov happens in 6 hours. If we can't communicate terms clearly, we lose the shipping contract. Elena's fingers paused on the keyboard. Kozlov. That was a Russian name. Your translator's in the hospital, the bodyguard said. Appendicitis. We can reschedule. Kozlov doesn't reschedule. He views it as weakness. The Italian man pulled out his phone, jaw tight with frustration. 3 months of negotiations, and it falls apart because Marco ate bad shellfish. Elena told herself to stay quiet, told herself this wasn't her problem. But $40 for medical translation suddenly seemed insufficient when rent was due in 8 days and she was $73 short. She looked up before she could stop herself. I speak Russian. Both men turned to stare at her. Up close, the Italian man was devastating. Not classically handsome, but compelling in a way that made her pulse quicken. Sharp cheekbones, a small scar through his left eyebrow, and those eyes dark brown, intelligent, and currently examining her like she was a puzzle to solve. You speak Russian, he repeated, his tone making it a question. Fluently. Also English, Spanish, French, and Italian. Elena closed her laptop, something reckless stirring in her chest. If you need a translator, I'm available. My rate is $200 an hour, 3-hour minimum. The number was absurd. She'd never charged more than $50 an hour in her life, but men in expensive coats could afford absurd, and she needed $600 like she needed air. The bodyguard snorted. We don't hire translators off the street. Then you probably shouldn't be discussing business deals in public laundromats. Elena met the Italian man's eyes. But if you'd rather lose your shipping contract with Kozlov because your regular translator ate bad shellfish, that's your choice. Something flickered across the man's face. Surprise, maybe, or reluctant amusement. You know Kozlov? I know the name belongs to one of 3 major Russian import-export operations in New York. I'm guessing you're negotiating shipping routes, probably through Newark or the Brooklyn ports. She shrugged. It's not complicated math. What's your name? Elena Volkov. Volkov. He said it perfectly, the Russian rolling off his tongue. You're Russian? My grandmother was. I'm American. She stood, gathering her laptop. Look, you clearly need help, and I need money. This can be a simple business transaction. I translate your meeting. You pay me. We never see each other again." The Italian man studied her for a long moment. Elena felt the weight of his gaze, the assessment happening behind those dark eyes. She'd been looked at by men before the wrong kind of looking, the kind that made her skin crawl. This was different. He was evaluating her competence, her trustworthiness, her potential value. Finally, he nodded. "My name is Dante Caruso. The meeting is at 9 this morning. Can you be ready?" "Where?" "The Meridian Hotel, private conference room." He pulled out his wallet, extracted $500 bills, and held them out. "Advance payment. If you do well, there's another 1,000 after. $1,500. Elena's fingers trembled slightly as she took the money. That was rent, groceries, the outstanding electric bill, and a cushion. That was survival for another month. "Give me the address and your number," she said, forcing her voice steady. "I'll be there at 8:30. Dante handed her a business card. Elegant, minimalist, just his name and a phone number. "Wear something professional. Kozlov values appearances. I'll manage." She pocketed the card and the cash. "Anything else I should know?" "Yes." His expression grew serious. "Everything you hear in that meeting is confidential. You translate accurately. You keep your opinions to yourself, and you forget everything afterward. Understood?" There was a warning beneath the polite words. Elena recognized it, the same way she recognized danger in dark alleys and bad neighborhoods. This man was offering her money, but he was also warning her of consequences. "Understood," she said. After they left, Elena sat back down, staring at the $500 in her hand. She should have said no, should have stayed invisible, stayed safe. Men who conducted business at 9 in the morning after midnight meetings in laundromats weren't legitimate businessmen, but $1,500 was $1,500. And Elena Volkov had learned a long time ago that survival sometimes meant taking risks. She pulled out her phone and Googled Dante Caruso, New York. The results made her stomach drop. The fateful encounter. Elena stood outside the Meridian Hotel at 8:20, wearing the only professional outfit she owned, a black pencil skirt and white blouse she'd bought at a thrift store 3 years ago. She'd ironed them carefully in her apartment's tiny kitchen, steaming out wrinkles over the stove. Her dark blonde hair was pulled into a neat bun, and she'd applied minimal makeup from a collection of drugstore products that had to last months. She didn't look like she belonged here. The Meridian catered to a clientele that spent more on breakfast than she made in a week, but she held her head high as she walked through the revolving doors, projecting confidence she didn't feel. The bodyguard from last night, she'd learned, his name was Marco, through her Google research, waited in the lobby. He looked her over with obvious skepticism. "Boss is in the Windsor conference room, 3rd floor." He gestured toward the elevators. "He wants to brief you before Kozlov arrives." The conference room was all dark wood and leather chairs, with windows overlooking Manhattan's morning skyline. Dante stood at the head of a long table, speaking rapidly in Italian to another man. He wore a navy suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent, and somehow looked even more intimidating than he had in the laundromat. When he saw Elena, he ended his conversation and approached. "You came. You're paying me $1,500. Of course I came." The corner of his mouth twitched. Almost a smile. "Did you research me?" "Yes. No point lying. Dante Caruso, head of the Caruso family's New York operations. Real estate development, import-export businesses, and various other enterprises that the internet was very vague about. And you still came. I need the money more than I need to ask questions." Elena set down her worn bag, meeting his eyes. "But I should clarify something. If this meeting involves anything explicitly illegal, drug trafficking, human trafficking, anything that would make me an accessory to serious crimes, I'm walking out. I need money. Mr. Caruso, but I have limits." Dante's expression shifted, something like respect flickering across his features. "This meeting is about legitimate shipping contracts, container routes through the port of Newark. Kozlov controls access to certain Russian markets. I need those markets to expand my business. That's all? That's all you need to know." He pulled out a folder, sliding it across the table. "These are the terms we're proposing. Read through them. Understand the numbers. When Kozlov speaks, you translate exactly what he says, not interpretation, not softening, exact words. When I speak, you do the same into Russian. If you're hooked on this story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more emotional stories like this one." Elena opened the folder, scanning the documents. Contract terms, percentage splits, delivery schedules. Complex, but nothing she couldn't follow. This is straightforward. Why did your regular translator have such trouble with Kozlov? Because Kozlov is testing. Another voice said from the doorway. A man in his 50s entered, gray hair slicked back, wearing a suit that screamed old money. He looked at Elena with unconcealed disdain. Who is this? Our translator, Vincent. Dante's voice carried a warning. Elena Volkov. You hired a girl off the street for the Kozlov negotiation? Vincent's face reddened. Dante, this is a $20 million contract. We can't trust some random. She speaks fluent Russian. Marco didn't. That's why the last 3 meetings failed. Dante didn't raise his voice, but Vincent fell silent anyway. She's here. She's prepared. Unless you have a better solution in the next 15 minutes? Vincent glared at Elena. If you screw this up, girl, you'll regret it. Vincent, Dante said quietly. That's enough. The older man stalked to the far end of the table, pulling out his phone with barely suppressed fury. Elena's hands clenched slightly on the folder, but she kept her expression neutral. She'd dealt with men like Vincent before, men who saw her age, her gender, her cheap clothes, and decided she was worthless. Don't let him intimidate you, Dante said, low enough that only she could hear. Do your job, translate accurately. That's all I'm asking. At 8:55, Marco entered with 3 men. The one in the center was clearly Kozlov, late 60s. Silver beard, cold blue eyes that swept the room like a predator assessing prey. The 2 flanking him were younger, harder, with the bearing of men who'd done violence and would again. Caruso. Kozlov's English was heavily accented, deliberately clumsy. You found new translator. Young. Pretty. His eyes raked over Elena in a way that made her skin crawl. Hopefully more competent than the last. Mr. Kozlov, Elena said in perfect Russian, her tone polite but firm. It's an honor to facilitate this meeting. Please, have a seat. Kozlov's eyebrows rose. He responded in rapid Russian, the words coming fast and colloquial. So you actually speak my language, little bird, not just textbook phrases. I learned from my grandmother, Elena replied smoothly in Russian. She was from Vladivostok. She taught me that good translation requires understanding not just words, but intention. Something shifted in Kozlov's expression. Still calculating, still dangerous, but with a hint of approval. He switched to English. Then let us begin. For the next 2 hours, Elena translated. Back and forth, Russian to English, English to Russian. Kozlov tested her repeatedly, using obscure terms, regional idioms, deliberately complex phrasings. Each time, Elena caught the nuance and rendered it accurately. The contract negotiations were delicate. Kozlov wanted 70% of profits on Russian distribution. Dante countered with 55. They argued about container allocations, shipping timelines, enforcement of territory agreements. And gradually, Elena began to understand what she'd walked into. These weren't just shipping contracts. The language was coded. Containers meant something else. Distribution rights implied control over something more than cargo. When Kozlov mentioned ensuring product quality, Dante's jaw had tightened almost imperceptibly. She kept translating, exact words, no commentary, but her mind raced. Around 11, they took a break. Kozlov and his men stepped out to make phone calls. Vincent immediately rounded on Dante. He's asking for too much. 70% is robbery. He'll come down, Dante said calmly. This is posturing. And if he doesn't? Vincent glanced at Elena, then lowered his voice slightly. We can't afford to walk away from this deal, but we also can't accept terms that make us look weak to the other families. Families, Elena filed that word away. Dante's eyes flicked to her. She pretended to check her phone, appearing disinterested. We'll find middle ground. That's why we're here. When Kozlov returned, his demeanor had changed, more relaxed, almost genial. He spoke directly to Elena in Russian. Your employer is stubborn, little bird. Tell me, what do you think of his offers? Elena knew this was a trap. She met Kozlov's eyes and responded in Russian. I think Mr. Caruso values fair partnerships built on mutual respect. I also think you're both too intelligent to let pride destroy a profitable arrangement. Kozlov laughed, a genuine sound. He switched to English. She's clever, Caruso. You should keep her. I intend to, Dante said, and something in his tone made Elena's pulse quicken. By 1 o'clock, they'd reached an agreement. 62% to Kozlov, with Dante retaining control over distribution methods and quality oversight. Contract signing would happen next week after lawyers reviewed the terms. Kozlov stood, shaking Dante's hand. Then, surprising everyone, he extended his hand to Elena. You translate well, little bird. Better than the fool Caruso had before. He said something else in Russian, too low for the others to hear. Be careful. The Caruso family eats pretty things like you. Elena maintained her professional smile, but her stomach churned. After the Russians left, Dante turned to her. You did well. Very well. He pulled out an envelope, handing it to her. The remaining 1,000, plus a bonus. Elena opened it. $1,500 bills. This is more than we agreed. You earned it. Kozlov doesn't compliment people. The fact that he spoke to you directly, in Russian, means he respects you. Dante's dark eyes studied her. I'd like to hire you for the contract signing next week. Same rate. $3,500 total. Elena's mind spun with possibilities. That was 2 months of rent. Money for winter clothes. Maybe even fixing her laptop's screen. I'll do it, she said. Good. He pulled out his phone. Give me your contact information. I'll send details later this week. As Elena recited her number, Vincent's voice cut through. Dante, a word, private. Dante's expression shuddered. Wait here, he told Elena, then walked to the far corner with Vincent and Marco. She couldn't hear everything, but fragments drifted over. Can't be serious. Random girl, liability, proved herself. Kozlov trusted her. Exactly the problem. 10 now he knows her face. Elena gathered her things slowly, trying not to show she was listening. When the men's voices rose slightly, she caught Vincent saying, She's a loose end. You know how we handle loose ends. Her blood ran cold. Dante's response was too quiet to hear, but his body language was rigid, controlled fury. When Dante returned, his expression was carefully neutral. Thank you for your work today, Elena. I'll be in touch. Of course. She shouldered her bag, maintaining her professional demeanor even though her heart hammered. Have a good afternoon, Mr. Caruso. She made it to the elevator before her hands started shaking. The recognition Elena didn't go straight home. Instead, she walked 20 blocks, taking random turns, checking reflections in store windows. Nobody followed her. At least, nobody she could spot. She ended up in a Starbucks in Midtown, ordering the cheapest drink and sitting in a corner, finally letting herself process what had just happened. $1,500 sat in her bag. Life-changing money. But Vincent's words echoed in her head. She's a loose end. You know how we handle loose ends. Elena wasn't naive. She'd grown up in Brooklyn, worked overnight shifts in neighborhoods where people disappeared, learned to recognize danger. The Caruso family wasn't just import-export. They were organized crime, probably mafia, definitely dangerous. And she'd just walked into their world with her eyes wide open because she'd needed money. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Hello? Elena Volkov. Dante's voice, unmistakable. I need you to listen carefully. Don't go home tonight. Her stomach dropped. Why not? Because I just learned that someone leaked information about our meeting to a rival organization. They know you translated for me. They know your name. His tone was urgent but controlled. I'm sending Marco to pick you up. He'll take you somewhere safe until I can assess the threat level. Wait, I didn't agree to. You became part of this the moment you translated that meeting. Kozlov's enemies are now interested in you, which means I'm responsible for your safety. A pause. I'm not asking. Elena, I'm telling you. Marco will be at the Starbucks on West 47th in 10 minutes. Be outside. How do you know where I am? Because I've had security following you since you left the hotel, for your protection. His voice softened slightly. I know this is frightening, but I promise you, I won't let anyone hurt you. The line went dead. Elena sat frozen, her coffee cooling in front of her. Everything in her screamed to run, to walk out of this Starbucks, get on the subway, disappear into the city. But Dante had people following her. If he could track her this easily, so could whoever he was worried about. And she had $1,500 in her bag that she desperately needed. 10 minutes later, Marco's black SUV pulled up to the curb. Elena took a deep breath, shouldered her bag, and made a choice. She got in the car. The SUV wove through Manhattan traffic with practiced efficiency. Marco drove in silence, his eyes constantly checking mirrors. Elena sat in the back seat, her bag clutched on her lap, watching the city pass by and wondering if she'd just made the worst decision of her life. They crossed the Brooklyn Bridge as sunset painted the sky in shades of orange and purple. Instead of heading toward her neighborhood in Sunset Park, Marco turned north, driving through increasingly upscale areas until they reached Brooklyn Heights. The townhouse he stopped in front of was beautiful, red brick, white trim, wrought iron railings, the kind of property that cost millions. A far cry from Elena's fourth-floor walk-up with the broken radiator. "This is a safe house," Marco said, the first words he'd spoken during the drive. "Boss uses it sometimes. You'll stay here until the situation is resolved." "For how long?" "However long it takes." He got out, opening her door. "Come on, Dante's waiting inside." The interior was even more impressive. Hardwood floors, crown molding, furniture that looked antique but comfortable. Nothing like the cold minimalism she'd expected from a safe house. This looked like someone actually lived here. Dante stood in the living room, jacket discarded, sleeves rolled up. He was on the phone, speaking rapid Italian, but ended the call when he saw her. "Elena, thank you for coming. You didn't give me much choice." She set down her bag, forcing herself to meet his eyes. "What's really going on? And don't give me vague warnings. If I'm in danger, I deserve to know why." He studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Fair enough. Sit down." Elena perched on the edge of an armchair. Dante remained standing, hands in his pockets, his expression serious. "The Kozlov meeting was important for reasons beyond the contract terms," he began. "For the past 6 months, a rival organization, the Marchetti family, has been trying to muscle into territory I control. The shipping routes with Kozlov represent significant leverage. If I secure them, I strengthen my position. If I don't, the Marchettis see weakness. And I'm involved because someone in that meeting room was feeding information to the Marchettis. Not Kozlov. He has no reason to undermine a profitable deal, which means either Vincent, Marco, or one of Kozlov's men was compromised." His jaw tightened. "The Marchettis now know I used an outside translator. They have your name, probably your address, and they're trying to determine if you're an asset they can flip or a liability they should eliminate." Elena's hands clenched on her knees. "So your business problems have become my life or death situation." "Yes, at least he was honest. Which is why you're under my protection now. The Marchettis won't touch you while you're here. And when I leave, we'll address that when it's safe." Dante moved closer, crouching so they were eye level. "I know this isn't fair. You walked into something you didn't fully understand, and now you're paying the price. But I give you my word I will keep you safe. No one will hurt you." Elena wanted to scream at him, to rage about how one translation job had destroyed her, carefully maintained invisibility. But anger wouldn't help. She needed to think strategically. "I have a job interview tomorrow," she said quietly, "at a law firm. If I don't show up, I lose the opportunity." "What firm?" "Morrison and Associates. Paralegal position." It was a long shot anyway. She didn't have a college degree, just years of freelance translation work, but it had been hope. A chance at stability. Dante pulled out his phone, typing rapidly. "I know Richard Morrison. I'll have him reschedule, tell him you had a family emergency." "You know," Elena stopped herself. Of course he knew Richard Morrison. Men like Dante knew everyone who mattered. "That's not necessary. It's already done." He showed her his phone. A text conversation with someone named Richard, brief and professional. "Your interview is rescheduled for next Monday. That gives us a week to resolve this situation." "A week?" Elena's stomach churned. "I can't stay here for a week. I have bills, responsibilities. Your rent is covered. I had Marco pay your landlord for the next 3 months." Dante's tone was matter of fact, like this was completely normal. "Your electric and internet bills are also handled. You don't need to worry about money." The casual way he'd invaded her life, paid her bills, made decisions without asking, it should have infuriated her. Instead, Elena felt something worse, relief. Because for the first time in years, someone else was handling the constant, crushing weight of survival. And that relief terrified her more than the danger. "I didn't ask you to do that," she said, her voice harder than intended. "No, but you needed it." Dante stood, putting necessary distance between them. "I'm not trying to control you, Elena. I'm trying to protect you. There's a difference." "Is there?" She met his eyes. "Because from where I'm sitting, you've taken away my choice, paid my bills without permission, and trapped me in this beautiful cage." Something flickered across his face. Regret, maybe, or understanding? "You're right. I should have asked." But the Marchettis don't wait for permission before they act, and I won't risk your safety on polite courtesies. He moved toward the door. The kitchen is fully stocked. Second floor has 3 bedrooms, take whichever you want. Marco will be stationed outside. If you need anything, tell him. Where are you going? To find out who betrayed me. The coldness in his voice raised chills, and to make sure they understand the consequences. After he left, Elena stood alone in the townhouse, surrounded by luxury she'd never imagined living in, protected by a man she barely knew, from people who wanted to hurt her because she'd needed $1,500. She walked upstairs slowly, opening doors. The bedrooms were gorgeous, one with a 4-poster bed, another with a reading nook overlooking the street, a third with an ensuite bathroom that had a clawfoot tub. Elena chose the room with the reading nook. She sat on the window seat, looking out at Brooklyn Heights as night fell, and finally let herself cry. The next 3 days were surreal. Elena woke up in a comfortable bed, showered in a bathroom with water pressure that didn't fluctuate, and made coffee in a kitchen with appliances that actually worked. Marco was always nearby, silent and watchful. He brought groceries without being asked, responded to her questions with monosyllabic answers, and occasionally checked in with someone on his phone in low Italian. Dante was gone. Marco said he was handling business, which Elena interpreted as finding the person who'd leaked information. She tried not to think about what handling meant. On the second day, a woman arrived. Late 50s, kind eyes, carrying several shopping bags. "I'm Rosa," she said in accented English. "Mr. Caruso asked me to bring you some things." The bags contained clothes. Not expensive designer pieces, but practical items, jeans that fit perfectly, comfortable sweaters, undergarments in her exact size, even pajamas. Everything was her style, her size, like someone had studied her preferences. "How did he know?" Elena asked, holding up a soft gray cardigan that was exactly something she'd choose. Rosa smiled. "Mr. Caruso is very observant. He pays attention to details." That night, unable to sleep, Elena found herself in the townhouse library. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined the walls, filled with everything from classic literature to contemporary fiction. She ran her fingers along the spines, pulling out a worn copy of 100 Years of Solitude in the original Spanish. The margins were filled with handwritten notes. Dante's handwriting, she realized. Thoughts on Marquez's use of magical realism, connections to Italian family structures, observations about isolation and legacy. He read literature. Thoughtfully, analytically. This man who ordered people around and made problems disappear also sat in this library and wrote notes about Gabriel Garcia Marquez. The cognitive dissonance made her head hurt. On the third day, Dante returned. Elena heard the front door open around noon. She was in the kitchen, making lunch a simple pasta, with vegetables from the well-stocked refrigerator. Marco's voice drifted in from the hallway. Then Dante's response, too low to make out words. When Dante entered the kitchen, he looked exhausted. His suit was rumpled, dark circles shadowed his eyes, and there was a cut on his knuckles that hadn't been there before. "You're cooking," he observed. "Rosa brought groceries. I got bored." Elena stirred the pasta, trying to ignore the way her pulse quickened at his presence. "Are you hungry?" "Starving." She made 2 plates, and they sat at the kitchen island in unexpected domesticity. Dante ate like he hadn't had a proper meal in days, which was probably true. "Did you find who betrayed you?" Elena asked finally. "Yes. And?" "It's handled." His tone made it clear he wouldn't elaborate. "You're safe now. The Marchettis know you're under my protection, and that touching you would start a war they can't win. So I can go home?" Dante set down his fork. "Technically, yes. But I'd prefer you stay here a few more days. Just to be certain. Because you don't trust that they'll back off. Because I don't trust anyone." He met her eyes. "Elena, the Marchettis agreed to leave you alone, but that doesn't mean they're happy about it. If you go back to your apartment, back to your normal routine, you become an easy target again. Here, you're protected." "For how long?" The question came out sharper than intended. "A few more days? A week? Forever? At what point do I get my life back? When I'm certain you won't be hurt because of me." Dante's voice was quiet but firm. "I know you didn't ask for this. But you're in it now, and I won't let you suffer consequences from my world." Elena stood abruptly, taking her plate to the sink. "This is impossible. I can't just hide in this townhouse indefinitely. I have a job interview on Monday, bills that need managing beyond what you've paid, a life." What kind of life? The question stopped her. Dante continued, his tone not cruel but brutally honest. I've seen your apartment, Elena. A fourth-floor walk-up with broken heating and neighbors who play music until 3 a.m. I've seen your bank statements, you're one emergency away from eviction. I've seen how you live, and it's survival, not life. Tears burned behind her eyes. You have no right. I have every right because I'm the reason you're in danger. He stood, moving closer. But I'm also offering you a choice. Stay here where it's safe. Let me help you. Not just with protection, but with everything. The job at Morrison & Associates? I can guarantee they hire you. Your translation work? I can connect you with clients who pay 10 times what you're making now. I can give you stability, security, a chance to stop scrambling just to survive. In exchange for what? Elena turned to face him. My independence? My self-respect? What exactly do you want from me, Dante? His hand cupped her face, thumb brushing her cheekbone. The touch was gentle, unexpected. I want you safe. That's all. No one does something for nothing. Then consider it atonement. His dark eyes held hers. You got dragged into my world because you needed money to survive. That's on me. Let me make it right. Elena should have pushed him away, should have maintained the distance, the boundaries. Instead, she found herself leaning into his touch, drawn by the warmth and the certainty he projected. I don't understand you, she whispered. One minute you're a crime boss making people disappear, the next you're reading Marquez in Spanish and making sure I have comfortable pajamas. A small smile tugged at his mouth. I contain multitudes. That's not funny. It's a little funny. His thumb traced her jaw. Elena, I'm not asking you to trust me completely. I know I haven't earned that. But I am asking you to let me help. To let me protect you until this situation is truly resolved. The thing was, she wanted to say yes. Wanted to accept the safety and security he offered. But Elena had learned young that accepting help meant owing people. And owing people always led to pain. 1 week, she said finally. I'll stay 1 more week. But then I go back to my life. With or without your approval. 1 week, Dante agreed. But after that, we discuss next steps. Together. It wasn't quite victory, and it wasn't quite surrender. It was compromise. Negotiated in a Brooklyn Heights kitchen that smelled like garlic and olive oil, between 2 people who shouldn't have anything in common, but couldn't seem to stay apart. The glimpse behind the mask, on the mask out of the mask. The 4th day, Elena woke to the sound of yelling. She stumbled downstairs, following angry Italian voices to Dante's office. The door was slightly ajar, and through it she could see Dante and Vincent in a heated argument. Complete liability. Vincent's voice carried clearly. Should have eliminated the problem. If you're suggesting what I think you're suggesting, Dante's voice was ice, then you need to leave before I forget we've known each other for 20 years. She's nobody, Dante. A girl who happened to speak Russian. You're risking everything, the family, the business, your position for someone who means nothing. She means something to me. The words hung in the air. Elena's breath caught. Vincent made a disgusted sound. You've known her less than a week. This isn't about protection. You're thinking with, finish that sentence and you'll regret it. Dante's voice dropped to a whisper, somehow more threatening than shouting. Elena Volkov is under my protection. That makes her family business. And you will show her respect, or you'll answer to me. Silence. Then Vincent's footsteps approaching the door. Elena scrambled back, trying to retreat before he saw her, but she wasn't fast enough. Vincent emerged, his face red with fury. When he spotted her, his expression twisted into something ugly. Enjoy it while it lasts, girl, he said quietly. Men like Dante don't keep girls like you around for long. He pushed past, slamming the front door behind him. Elena stood frozen in the hallway, Vincent's words echoing. Dante appeared in the office doorway, saw her, and swore quietly in Italian. How much did you hear? Enough. She wrapped her arms around herself. He's not wrong, is he? This is temporary. Eventually, you'll send me back to my life, and we'll never see each other again. Dante moved toward her slowly, like she might bolt. Is that what you want? I don't know what I want. The admission hurt. A week ago, my biggest problem was making rent. Now I'm hiding in a townhouse, protected by a man who terrifies me and fascinates me in equal measure. From people who want to hurt me because I translated one meeting. Nothing about this makes sense. No, he agreed. It doesn't. They stood in the hallway, the morning light streaming through the windows, the space between them charged with everything unsaid. Come with me, Dante said finally. I want to show you something. He led her upstairs to a room she hadn't explored yet. When he opened the door, Elena's breath caught. It was an art studio. Canvases leaned against walls, some finished, others barely started. Paints and brushes organized on shelves. The smell of turpentine and linseed oil. And on the walls, paintings that were stunning, abstract pieces with bold colors, intricate cityscapes, portraits that captured raw emotion. You painted these, Elena breathed, moving closer to examine a canvas depicting the Brooklyn Bridge at sunset. It's how I think. Dante stood in the doorway, watching her reaction. Business meetings, negotiations, problems to solve, I can handle all of that. But sometimes my mind gets too loud. Too many voices, too many decisions, too much violence. Painting quiets it. Elena turned to him, seeing him differently. How long have you been doing this? Since I was 10. My mother was an artist before she married my father. She taught me that creating something beautiful was the only way to survive a world built on ugliness. His expression grew distant. She died when I was 15. After that, painting was the only way I could feel close to her. The vulnerability in his voice cracked something open in Elena's chest. This wasn't the crime boss or the businessman. This was Dante, a boy who'd lost his mother and found solace in art. Do you show these to anyone? You're the first person besides Marco who's been in this room in 5 years. He moved beside her, looking at his own work with critical eyes. Vincent would say it's weakness. That men in my position shouldn't have hobbies, shouldn't create, shouldn't feel anything except ambition and control. Vincent is wrong. Is he? Dante turned to face her fully. I'm supposed to be cold, calculated, ruthless. That's how you survive in this world. But then you walked into that laundromat with your cracked laptop and your determination, and I couldn't be cold. I couldn't calculate whether you were worth the risk. I just knew I needed to protect you. Elena's heart hammered against her ribs. Why? Because you reminded me that there's more to life than survival. His hand found hers, fingers intertwining. You speak 6 languages because you love words. You take translation jobs at 2 a.m. because you refuse to give up. You look at me like I'm a person, not a position. That's rare, Elena. That's worth protecting. She should have pulled away, should have maintained distance. Instead, she squeezed his hand. I'm scared, she admitted quietly. Of this. Of you. Of what happens when the week ends and reality comes back. Then don't think about the week ending. Dante stepped closer, his other hand cupping her face. Think about right now, this moment. What do you want? What did she want? Elena had spent so long focused on survival, making rent, paying bills, staying invisible that she'd forgotten how to want anything else. But looking at Dante, seeing the vulnerability in his eyes, the paintings on the walls, the man behind the reputation, she knew. I want this to be real, she whispered. Not protection or obligation. Real. It is real. His forehead rested against hers. I don't know how to navigate this any more than you do. But it's real, Elena. I promise you that. When he kissed her, it felt like falling and flying simultaneously. Gentle at first, questioning, then deeper as she responded. His arms wrapped around her, and Elena let herself feel safe. Actually safe, not just protected. They stayed in the art studio for hours. Dante showed her his paintings, explaining techniques and inspiration. Elena told him about her grandmother, about learning Russian while making pirozhki, about the years of scrambling to survive after her parents died. They talked about books discovering they'd both read 100 Years of Solitude in Spanish. About music, Dante played jazz piano. Elena had taken violin lessons in middle school before her family could no longer afford them. About New York, and all the places they'd been within the same city without ever crossing paths. And for those hours, the danger outside didn't matter. It was just 2 people finding unexpected connection in the most unlikely circumstances. That evening, Marco brought dinner from an Italian restaurant that Dante said made the best carbonara outside of Rome. They ate in the kitchen, the 3 of them, and for the first time, Marco actually smiled at something Elena said about her grandmother's terrible attempt to make borscht. My nonna was the same with American food, Marco said, his usually stern face softening. She tried to make hamburgers once, used lamb because she didn't trust American beef. It was terrible, Dante laughed, a real laugh that transformed his face. I remember that. She was so proud, and we all had to pretend it was delicious. The moment was warm, domestic, normal, Elena felt something shift in her chest. This wasn't just about protection anymore. This was about belonging. Later, after Marco had gone to his post outside, Elena and Dante sat in the library. He'd built a fire in the fireplace, unnecessary for warmth, but beautiful. She curled up on the couch with her worn copy of Marquez that she'd brought from her apartment. Dante sat beside her, his arm around her shoulders, reading over her shoulder. "Your Spanish is excellent," he observed. "Where did you learn?" "Community college, then practicing with customers, up at the diner where I worked." This woman, Maria, she was from Argentina. She'd order the same thing every morning, 2 eggs, toast, coffee, and we'd talk for hours during slow periods. She taught me to hear the music in the language. You have a gift for it. Languages. Dante's fingers traced patterns on her arm. Have you ever thought about teaching? Working with immigrants, helping them learn English? Sometimes. But teaching requires certification, and certification requires money and time I don't have. Elena closed the book. I've thought about a lot of things I can't do because survival takes priority. What if survival wasn't an issue? His voice was careful. What if you had the time and resources? What would you do? Elena considered the question seriously. I'd teach. Help people who came here with nothing, like my grandmother did. Give them the words to build new lives. She looked at him. Why? Because when this week ends, I don't want you going back to low, barely surviving. I want you to thrive. Dante shifted to face her fully. I have connections at several literacy centers and immigrant support organizations. After the Morrison interview, if you're interested, I can arrange introductions. No obligation, no strings attached, just opportunities. Why would you do that? Because you deserve more than translation jobs at 2 in the morning in laundromats. His hand found hers. And because I'm selfish enough to want you to stay in New York. In my life. If you'll have me. Elena's throat tightened. This is insane. We've known each other less than a week. I know. You're a crime boss. Your world is dangerous. I know that too. I should be smart and walk away. Probably. A small smile tugged at his mouth. But are you going to? Elena looked at this man who'd invaded her life, protected her, showed her his art, and made her believe in possibilities beyond survival. She thought about Vincent's words that this was temporary, that men like Dante didn't keep girls like her around. But she also thought about the way Dante looked at her, the vulnerability he'd shown, the future he was offering. No, she said quietly. I'm not walking away. Dante's smile was brilliant, transforming his face. He pulled her close, kissing her with a tenderness that made her eyes burn with unexpected tears. Outside, the city continued its chaotic rhythm. Danger still lurked. The week would end eventually. But in that moment, wrapped in Dante's arms, Elena let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, she'd found something worth the risk. The complication. The call came at 2 in the morning. Elena woke to the sound of Dante's phone buzzing insistently. He'd fallen asleep beside her on the library couch, both of them exhausted from talking until past midnight. Now he jerked awake, instantly alert, his body going rigid as he checked the screen. He answered in rapid Italian, his voice low and controlled. But Elena, I heard the edge of tension. She sat up, watching his expression shift from alert to cold fury. When? A pause. How many? Another pause, longer. I'm on my way. He ended the call, already standing, his mind clearly racing through calculations. What happened? Elena asked, fear creeping up her spine. Dante looked at her, and for a moment, she saw something in his eyes that terrified her, not anger, but cold, absolute determination. The Marchettis broke the agreement. They just hit one of my warehouses in Red Hook. 3 of my men are injured, 1 critical. His voice was flat, empty of emotion. This is escalation. This is war. But they agreed to leave me alone. This isn't about you. Not directly. He moved toward the door. This is about them testing my response. They want to see if protecting you has made me soft, if I'll hesitate to retaliate because I'm distracted. Elena stood, following him. What are you going to do? Dante stopped at the doorway, turning to face her. What I have to. Marco will stay with you. Don't leave this house for any reason. I'll be back by morning. Dante. He crossed to her in 2 strides, kissing her hard and fast. Stay safe, please. Then he was gone, his footsteps echoing down the stairs, the front door opening and closing. Through the window, Elena watched him get into a car that sped away into the night. She stood alone in the library, the fire dying, and wondered if she'd just watched him leave to kill someone. Elena didn't sleep. She paced the townhouse, Marco, a silent presence in the hallway, refusing to answer her questions beyond, "Boss will handle it." Morning came gray and cold. She made coffee she couldn't drink, stared at her phone, willing it to ring, tried to read and couldn't focus on a single word. At 9, the front door opened. Dante looked like he'd aged years overnight. His clothes were rumpled. There was blood on his shirt, not his, she prayed, and the exhaustion carved into his face. It went bone deep. But his eyes, those dark eyes that had softened for her, were hard as stone. "Are you hurt?" Elena rushed to him. "No." He let her guide him to the couch, sitting heavily. "My men are stable. The warehouse damage is manageable. But the Marchettis made their message clear they're not backing down." "What does that mean?" Dante was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried a weight that made her chest tighten. "It means I have to respond in a way that leaves no doubt about my position. No more negotiations. No more warnings." He looked at her, and she saw something die in his expression. "It means I have to do things I don't want you to know about. But I will know." Elena sat beside him, taking his hands. They were cold. "I'm not stupid, Dante. I understand what you're going to do. Then you understand why I can't ask you to stay." His voice cracked slightly. "Vincent was right. I'm risking everything for you, the family's respect, my reputation, my ability to lead. The Marchettis are escalating because they see you as my weakness. And they're not wrong. So what? You send me away, go to war, and we pretend this never happened?" Anger flared through her fear. "That's your solution?" "It's the smart solution." But he didn't let go of her hands. "Elena, if you stay in my life, this becomes your reality. Violence and danger and constant threats. Men like me don't get happy endings. We get blood and betrayal, and eventually, we get buried or imprisoned. I can't ask you to accept that." "You're not asking. I'm choosing." She gripped his hands tighter. "I know who you are, Dante. I know what you do. And I'm terrified. God, I'm so scared I can barely breathe. But I'm more scared of walking away and spending the rest of my life wondering what we could have been. You should walk away." His forehead pressed against hers. "You should be smart and leave and never look back." "Probably," she echoed his words from yesterday. "But I'm not going to." When he kissed her this time, it felt desperate, like he was trying to memorize her, to hold on to something good before he had to become something terrible. Elena kissed him back with everything she had, pouring all her fear and determination and impossible hope into it. They stayed like that for long minutes, wrapped around each other, the morning light streaming through windows, the world outside demanding violence neither of them wanted. Finally, Dante pulled back. "I have to meet with my people. Plan the response. It's going to be ugly." "I know. And you still want to stay?" "I still want to stay." Something shifted in his expression, resolve settling into place. "Then you stay. But Elena, I need you to promise me something." "What?" "If this goes wrong, if the war escalates and I can't protect you anymore, Marco will get you out. New identity, new city, money to start over. You don't argue, you don't wait for me, you just go. Promise." The request felt like swallowing glass. "Dante, promise me." His hands framed her face. "I can face anything if I know you'll survive it." Tears burned behind her eyes. "I promise." He kissed her forehead, then stood, straightening his shoulders. The vulnerable man disappeared, replaced by the crime boss who made people disappear. "Marco, I need you downstairs. We have planning to do." As they left, Elena sat alone on the couch, her coffee cold, her world tilting on its axis. She'd chosen this, chosen him, chosen danger and violence and a future that might not exist past tomorrow. But she'd also chosen love. Real, complicated, impossible love. And that would have to be enough. The next 3 days were hell. Dante was gone most of the time, returning only to sleep a few hours before leaving again. When he was home, he was different, colder, more controlled, the mask firmly in place. He'd kiss her forehead, hold her while she slept, but there was a distance that hadn't been there before. Elena tried not to think about what he was doing, tried not to imagine the meetings, the orders, the violence being enacted in her name. Rosa came by daily, bringing food and news filtered through multiple layers of protection. "Mr. Caruso is handling things," she'd say with her kind smile. "Don't worry." But Elena did worry. She worried about Dante, about the men who worked for him, about the Marchettis retaliating, about the future they were trying to build on a foundation of blood. On the fourth night, Dante came home at midnight. Elena had fallen asleep on the library couch again, unable to rest properly in the bedroom without him. She woke to find him sitting in the chair across from her, still in his coat, just watching her. "How long have you been there?" she asked, sitting up. "An hour, maybe more." His voice was rough with exhaustion. "I couldn't sleep. Kept thinking about you here, waiting, and how you deserve so much better than this." Elena moved to sit at his feet, her hands on his knees. "Tell me what happened. Not the details. Just tell me where you are mentally." Dante's hand moved to her hair, fingers threading through it gently. "It's done. The Marchettis understand now that crossing me has consequences. They've pulled back, agreed to new territory boundaries, accepted that you're untouchable." He paused. "It cost 3 lives. 2 of theirs, 1 of mine. Good man named Tony who worked for me for 8 years. Had a wife, 2 kids. I'm sorry." The words felt inadequate. His family will be taken care of. College funds, mortgage paid off, monthly stipend for life. It doesn't bring him back, but it's what I can do. His eyes met hers. "And I have to live with the fact that he died because I chose to protect a woman I've known for 2 weeks instead of handling this situation the way Vincent wanted." Elena's stomach turned. What did Vincent want? For you to disappear, either paid off and relocated, or he, and stopped. Vincent sees the world in absolutes. Problems are eliminated, not managed. He's been my closest advisor for 20 years, and for the first time, I'm questioning his judgment. Because of me, because of how he talks about you, how he sees you as disposable. Dante's hand cupped her face. "You're not disposable, Elena. You're 11, he struggled for words. You're the first real thing I've felt in years, the first person who looks at me and sees something worth saving. You are worth saving." She leaned into his touch. "You're not just what you do, Dante. You're the man who paints, who reads Marquez, who makes sure Tony's family is taken care of. That man is worth everything." He pulled her up into his lap, holding her tight. "I'm so tired," he admitted quietly. "Tired of the violence, the constant calculating, the weight of everyone depending on my decisions. Sometimes I think about walking away from all of it. Would they let you?" "No, men in my position don't. Retire. We die or we get forced out." His arms tightened around her. "But I could shift things, transition more operations to legitimate businesses, step back from the violence. It would take years, and I'd never be fully out, but I could build something different, something that doesn't cost good men their lives." Elena pulled back to look at him. "Is that what you want?" "What I want is a life where I can wake up next to you without wondering if someone's going to try to kill us. What I want is to take you to dinner without security detail. What I want is normal, and I have no idea how to achieve that. Then we figure it out together." She kissed him softly. "One step at a time. You don't have to have all the answers right now." They sat like that for a long time, wrapped around each other, finding comfort in presence when words failed. Finally, Dante spoke again. "Your interview at Morrison & Associates is Monday. 3 days. I know. If they offer you the position, take it. Even if it means—" He stopped. "Even if it means you need distance from me. Take the job. Build your career. Don't let my world limit your possibilities." Elena pulled back sharply. "You're trying to push me away again. I'm trying to give you choices." His voice was firm but gentle. "Elena, you walked into my life by accident. You stayed because you were in danger. Now that danger is resolved. The Marchettis won't touch you. You're free to leave, to go back to your apartment, to live your life. I'll still help with job connections, with opportunities, but you don't owe me anything. You never did. This isn't about owing you." Frustration made her voice sharp. "Why do you keep trying to give me exits? Do you want me to leave?" "God, no." The admission was raw. "I want you to stay so badly it terrifies me. I want to wake up next to you every morning. I want to come home to you every night. I want to build a future where we're both happy and safe. But wanting something doesn't make it possible. And I won't trap you in my world just because I'm selfish enough to love you." The words hung in the air between them. "Love." He'd said it. Actually said it. "Say that again," Elena whispered. Dante's eyes held hers, vulnerable and certain at once. "I love you. I know it's too soon and too complicated and probably too dangerous. But I love you, Elena Volkov. Every stubborn, brilliant, brave part of you." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I love you too." even though you're impossible and infuriating, and you keep trying to make decisions for me. I love you." When he kissed her this time, it was different. Not desperate or questioning, but claiming. A promise. They made their way upstairs eventually, to the bedroom with the four-poster bed Elena had avoided. Tonight, she chose it. Chose him. Chose this impossible future they were trying to build. And for the first time in days, wrapped in Dante's arms, Elena actually slept. The battle Monday morning arrived with unseasonable warmth. Elena stood in front of the mirror. Wearing one of the professional outfits, Rosa had brought a charcoal gray suit that fit perfectly. Subtle makeup, her hair pulled into a neat bun. She looked competent, professional, like someone who belonged at a prestigious law firm. Dante leaned against the doorframe, watching her. "You look perfect. I'm terrified." She adjusted her collar for the third time. "What if they ask about the gap in my employment? What if they check my references and— Elena." He crossed to her, hands settling on her shoulders. "You speak 6 languages fluently. You have years of translation experience. You're brilliant and capable. Richard Morrison would be lucky to have you." "You really believe that?" "I know it." He kissed her softly. "Now go prove it to them." Marco drove her to Morrison and Associates, a high-rise in Midtown with views that probably cost more per square foot than her entire apartment. The receptionist was friendly, the office was gleaming glass and dark wood, and Richard Morrison himself was surprisingly warm. The interview went well, better than well. They discussed her language skills, her experience, her availability. Morrison seemed genuinely impressed, asking thoughtful questions and outlining opportunities for growth within the firm. "We've been looking for someone with your language capabilities," he said, leaning back in his leather chair. "A lot of our clients are international corporations. Having in-house translation would be invaluable. The position is yours if you want it." Elena's heart soared. "Really? Really? Salary is $70,000 to start, full benefits, 2 weeks vacation." He slid a folder across the desk. "Look over the offer. Let me know by Friday." $70,000. Elena had never made more than $30,000 in a year. This was life-changing money, stability, security, everything she'd been fighting for. "Thank you," she managed. "I thank you so much." As Marco drove her back to Brooklyn Heights, Elena stared at the offer letter, her mind spinning. This was real. A legitimate career doing something she loved, making enough money to not just survive but actually live. And it had happened because of Dante's connections. The thought sat uncomfortable in her chest. She'd earned the job with her skills, but she'd only gotten the interview because of who she knew. Was that acceptable? Was that how the world worked when you had access to power? At the townhouse, she found Dante in his office, on the phone speaking rapid Italian. When he saw her, he ended the call immediately. "How did it go?" "They offered me the position." She showed him the letter. $70,000 a year, full benefits. I start in 2 weeks. Dante's smile was genuine, reaching his eyes. "That's incredible. I'm so proud of you. You called in a favor." It wasn't a question. His smile faded slightly. "I made an introduction. You earned the job. Did I? Or did Richard Morrison hire me because saying no to Dante Caruso would be bad for business?" The words came out sharper than intended. Dante stood, moving around the desk. "Elena, Morrison and Associates needs qualified translators. You are qualified. Yes, I facilitated the introduction, but I didn't tell Richard to hire you. That decision was based entirely on your skills. You can't know that. I can because I know Richard. He's a good man who runs a legitimate firm. He doesn't hire people to do me favors." Dante's voice was patient but firm. "But even if he did, even if my influence helped, does that diminish your accomplishment? You still have the skills. You still did the work. The only difference is, you got a chance you might not have gotten otherwise." Elena wanted to argue, wanted to reject anything that came from his world. But he wasn't wrong. How many qualified people never got opportunities because they didn't know the right people? How many jobs were filled through connections rather than cold applications? "I feel like I'm compromising my principles," she said quietly. "Or maybe you're learning that survival requires accepting help sometimes." He pulled her close. "Elena, you've spent years doing everything alone, refusing to depend on anyone. That's admirable, but it's also exhausting. There's no shame in accepting opportunities, especially when you've earned them through your actual capabilities." She rested her forehead against his chest, breathing in the scent of his cologne. I don't know how to navigate this world, your world, where money and power open doors that stay closed for people like me. Then we learned together. His hand stroked her hair. I don't know how to navigate your world either, where people work 3 jobs and still can't pay rent, where survival is a daily battle. But we teach each other. We figure it out. Elena pulled back to look at him. I'm taking the job. Good. And I'm moving back to my apartment. Dante's expression shuddered. What? I can't live here indefinitely, Dante. This isn't my house. These aren't my things. I need my own space, my independence. She saw the hurt flash across his face and rushed on. That doesn't mean we're over. It means I need to prove to myself that I can stand on my own feet, that I'm choosing you, not depending on you. He was quiet for a long moment. I understand that, but the apartment in Sunset Park is where I live. It's not much, but it's mine. Elena's voice was firm. I appreciate everything you've done. The safety, the support, the opportunities. But I can't build a relationship where I'm the rescued damsel. I need to be your equal, and I can't do that living in your house, wearing clothes you bought, eating food you provided. You are my equal. Dante's hands framed her face. Your strength, your intelligence, your determination, those are things I admire and respect. But I also understand, needing to prove it to yourself. So, yes, move back to your apartment. But let me assign security. Just until I'm certain the Marquettes won't test the agreement. Dante, please, it's not about control. It's about me being able to sleep at night knowing you're safe. His eyes held hers. Marco can park outside. You won't even know he's there most of the time. Just for a few weeks, until everything settles completely. It was a compromise. Elena could live with compromise. Fine, but just Marco, and just for a few weeks. Deal. He kissed her softly. When do you want to move back? Tomorrow. I start work in 2 weeks. But I need time to prepare, to settle back into normal life. She paused. Will I see you? After I move out? Every day if you'll let me. A small smile tugged at his mouth. I'm not letting you go, Elena. Not now. Not ever. But I'll court you properly. Dinner dates. Not just hiding in a townhouse. Normal couple things. Normal couple things with a Mafia boss. She couldn't help smiling. That's definitely going to be interesting. I prefer entrepreneur with complicated business holdings. Is that what we're calling it? It's what my lawyer calls it. His smile widened. Come on, let's celebrate your new job properly. I'm taking you to the best Italian restaurant in Brooklyn, and I promise no business discussions, no family drama, just us. That night, they went to a small restaurant in Carroll Gardens that Dante swore had the best osso buco outside of Milan. The owner, an elderly Italian man named Giuseppe, greeted Dante like family, and gave Elena a warm hug despite never having met her before. They ate amazing food, drank excellent wine, and talked about everything except danger and violence and complicated futures. Elena told Dante about her grandmother's terrible cooking experiments. Dante told her about growing up with a father who expected perfection and a mother who taught him that art was rebellion. For a few hours, they were just 2 people falling in love, not a crime boss and the translator he'd dragged into his world. It was perfect. Then Dante's phone rang. He glanced at the screen, his expression shifting immediately. I need to take this. I'm sorry. He stepped outside. Elena watched through the window as he paced, his body language growing tenser. Whatever the call was about, it wasn't good. When he returned, his face was carefully neutral. We need to go. What happened? Vincent called an emergency meeting. All family heads. Tonight. Dante threw cash on the table, more than enough to cover their meal twice over. Something's happened with the Marquettes. He wouldn't give details over the phone. The drive back to Brooklyn Heights was silent, tension radiating from Dante. When they arrived, cars lined the street, expensive vehicles that screamed power and money. Stay upstairs, Dante said as they entered. I don't know how long this will take, but I don't want you anywhere near this meeting. Elena started to argue, then saw his expression. This wasn't protectiveness. This was fear. Be careful, she said instead. He kissed her hard, like he was memorizing her. Always. She went upstairs to the library, trying to read but unable to focus. Voices drifted up from below, raised, angry, multiple people talking over each other. She caught fragments, broke the agreement. Retaliation. Weakness. Then Vincent's voice, loud and clear. This is what happens when you put a woman above family business. Elena's blood ran cold. She crept to the top of the stairs, staying in shadow. Below, she could see into the living room where at least 15 men gathered. Dante stood at the center, his expression carved from stone. Vincent faced him, red-faced and furious. "The Marquettas hit 3 of our trucks tonight," Vincent was saying. "Hijacked shipments worth $2 million. They're saying it's retaliation for Tony's death, but we all know what it's really about. They're testing whether you have the spine to lead this family." "I handled the Marchetti situation," Dante said, his voice dangerously calm. "They agreed to terms, and they broke them the second they sensed weakness." Vincent gestured wildly. "You've been distracted for 2 weeks, Dante, playing house with that girl instead of managing business. The other families see it. The Marchettis see it. Everyone sees that Dante Caruso has gone soft. Careful, Vincent. Or what? You'll remove me like you did Tony? Oh wait, Tony died because you were too busy protecting your translator to properly secure our operations." Vincent's voice dripped with venom. "She's a liability. She always has been. And until you eliminate that liability, this family will continue to see you as weak." Dante moved so fast, Elena almost missed it. One moment Vincent was ranting. The next Dante had him by the throat, slammed against the wall. "You will." "Never," Dante said, his voice barely above a whisper but carrying absolute menace. "Threaten her again. Do you understand me?" Vincent clawed at Dante's hand, his face turning red. "You're proving my point. Then let me be absolutely clear." Dante's grip tightened. "Elena Volkov is under my permanent protection. She is part of my life, which makes her part of this family's concerns. Anyone who touches her, anyone who threatens her, anyone who speaks about her the way you just did, they answer to me. Directly. Permanently." He released Vincent, who collapsed to the floor, gasping. Dante turned to face the room full of men, all watching with varying expressions of shock and calculation. "I know what you all think. That I've lost focus. That I care more about a woman than about the family. You're wrong." His voice carried absolute authority. "I care about building something that lasts. Tony died because our security was inadequate, not because I was distracted. The Marchettis are retaliating because we hit them hard, not because they sense weakness. And Elena," he paused. "Elena represents something none of you understand. A future where this family evolves beyond constant violence." "That's weakness talking," someone muttered. "No." Dante's eyes swept the room. "Weakness is thinking the only way to maintain power is through fear and bloodshed. Strength is building legitimate operations that can't be seized or destroyed. Strength is protecting what matters while still managing business. I've done both. The Marchettis will be handled again, and this time with enough force that they never question us again. But I will not apologize for loving someone, and I will not remove her from my life to satisfy your outdated notions of leadership." The room was silent. Finally, an older man Elena didn't recognize spoke up. "And if the Marchettis continue to escalate, if other families see this as an opportunity, then we remind them why the Caruso, if family has controlled this territory for 40 years. Dante's voice was ice, with overwhelming decisive action that leaves no room for misinterpretation. But that action will be calculated, strategic, and effective, not emotional retaliation. This is what I'm good at, gentlemen. Trust that I haven't forgotten how." Slowly, heads nodded. The tension in the room eased fractionally. Vincent pulled himself up, rubbing his throat. "You've made your position clear, Dante. But if this blows back on the family, then I'll handle that too." Dante cut him off. Meeting adjourned. "Marco, coordinate with Sal about the hijacked shipments. I want locations on the Marchetti safe houses by morning. The rest of you continue business as usual. Nothing about our operations changes except the severity of our response to threats." The men filed out slowly. Vincent left last, shooting Dante a look that promised this conversation wasn't over. When the house was finally empty except for Marco, stationed outside, Dante stood alone in the living room, shoulders rigid with tension. Elena descended the stairs slowly. Dante turned at the sound, seeing her. Something in his expression cracked. "You heard all of that. Most of it." She moved to him, taking his hands. They were shaking slightly. "Thank you for defending me. I shouldn't have had to." His voice was rough. "Vincent's been my friend for 20 years, and tonight I realized he sees you as disposable. That's unforgivable. He's scared." Elena squeezed his hands. "You're changing the rules, and that terrifies him. Men like Vincent understand violence and hierarchy. They don't understand evolution. Dante pulled her close, burying his face in her hair. I almost killed him. If he'd said one more word about you, I would have. But you didn't. She held him tight. You controlled it. You made your point without crossing a line you can't come back from. That takes more strength than violence would have. They stood like that for long minutes, finding calm in each other's presence. I need to handle the Marchetti situation, Dante said finally. Tomorrow, it won't be pretty. I know. And you're still going to move back to your apartment? Still going to try building this normal life while I do terrible things in the shadows? Elena pulled back to look at him. Yes, because I trust you to do what's necessary to protect your family and your business, and I trust myself to love you without losing who I am. We can do both, Dante. We have to believe that. He kissed her like she was oxygen. I don't deserve you. Probably not. She smiled against his lips. But you're stuck with me anyway. That night, they didn't sleep much. They talked about the future, about how Dante could gradually transition more operations to legitimate businesses, how Elena could build her career at Morrison & Associates, how they could create space for both their worlds to coexist. It wouldn't be easy. There would be more conflicts, more Vincent-level objections, more danger. But as dawn broke over Brooklyn and Elena lay wrapped in Dante's arms, she believed it was possible. Love was always a risk. The question was whether the reward justified the danger. Looking at Dante, at the man who'd defended her against his oldest friend, who'd chosen her over easier paths, who painted in secret and read Marquez and made her believe in futures she'd never imagined. The answer was yes, always yes. The new world, Elena moved back to her apartment on Tuesday morning. Dante helped her pack the few belongings she'd brought, drove her home himself, and carried boxes up 4 flights of stairs without complaint. The apartment looked exactly as she'd left it, cramped, slightly shabby. Home. But now she had money saved from the advance Dante had paid her, a job starting in 2 weeks that would pay $70,000 a year, and the knowledge that she didn't have to do this alone anymore. I'll miss you being at the townhouse, Dante said, setting down the last box. You'll see me almost every day. Elena wrapped her arms around his waist. And this way, when you visit, it'll feel special. Like we're choosing each other, not just defaulting because I'm already there. I like that perspective. He kissed the top of her head. Call me tonight? Definitely. After he left, Elena stood in her apartment feeling strange. 2 weeks ago, this had been her entire world. Now it felt like a way station between her past and whatever future she was building with Dante. Her phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Miss Volkov? A woman's voice. Professional. This is Sarah Chen from the New York Literacy Center. Dante Caruso gave me your contact information. He said you might be interested in volunteer teaching opportunities? Elena's eyes widened. Yes, potentially. What would that involve? We teach English to adult immigrants and refugees. Many of our students speak Russian, and we're desperately short on volunteers who can bridge that language gap. Would you be interested in meeting to discuss it? This was Dante's doing. Another door opening because of his connections. But unlike the Morrison job, this felt different. This was something she'd always wanted to do. A way to give back. To help people like her grandmother who'd come to America with nothing but determination. I'd love to meet, Elena said. Over the next few days, Elena settled into a new rhythm. She met with Sarah Chen, loved the Literacy Center's mission, and signed up to volunteer 2 evenings a week. She prepared for her new job, buying professional clothes with her own money, not expensive, but nice enough for a law firm. She had dinner with Dante 3 nights in a row at different restaurants, learning his favorite foods and sharing her own. And slowly, carefully, they built something real. On Saturday, Dante took her to meet someone important. My mother's sister, he explained as they drove to Queens. Aunt Maria. She raised me after my mother died, taught me that family was more than blood and business. She's the only person whose opinion actually matters to me. Elena's nerves kicked into overdrive. What if she doesn't like me? She'll love you. Dante squeezed her hand. But fair warning, she's going to ask invasive questions and probably try to feed you until you can't move. Maria Russo was exactly as advertised. A tiny Italian woman in her 70s with sharp eyes and a warm smile. She opened the door, looked Elena up and down, and immediately pulled her into a hug. So this is the girl who's made my nephew. Remember, he's human, she said in accented English. Come in, come in. I made braciole. The afternoon was wonderful. Maria told embarrassing stories about Dante as a child, how he'd painted on the walls, how he'd cried during Bambi, how he'd defended a kid being bullied and come home with a black eye and a smile. She asked Elena about her family, her life, her intentions with Dante, and somehow made the interrogation feel like genuine interest rather than judgment. "He's different with you," Maria said quietly when Dante stepped out to take a call. "Softer. More like the boy I raised instead of the man his father tried to make him." "He's a good man," Elena said. "He's a complicated man." Maria's eyes were kind but knowing. The life he lives, it's not easy for the people who love him. There will be danger, secrets, difficult choices. Can you handle that? Elena thought about Vincent's words, about watching Dante leave to handle violence, about the constant calculation required to love someone in his world. "I don't know," she admitted, "but I want to try. He's worth trying for." Maria smiled. "That's the right answer. Not false confidence, just honest determination. You'll do well, I think." When they left, Maria hugged Elena again. "Come back soon, and make him bring you for Sunday dinner. He misses too many." In the car, Dante looked lighter than Elena had ever seen him. "She loved you," he said. "How do you know?" "Because she spoke to you in English the whole time. When she doesn't like someone, she speaks only Italian to make them uncomfortable." He grinned. "You're officially approved." There was an approval process? With Aunt Maria, there's always an approval process. That night they went back to Dante's townhouse. Not because Elena was staying there, but because he wanted to show her something. He led her to the art studio, where a new painting sat on the easel. It was her Elena reading on the library couch, sunlight streaming through the window, her expression peaceful and focused. "You painted me," she breathed. "I've been working on it all week." Dante stood beside her, looking at his own work with critical eyes. "It's not finished yet. I can't quite get your eyes right the way they shift between gray and green depending on the light." Elena turned to him, tears, threatening. "It's beautiful. You're beautiful." He pulled her close. "Elena, I know we're taking this slowly, building something real instead of rushing, but I need you to know this isn't temporary for me. This isn't until the danger passes or until I get bored. This is forever. You're forever. Forever is a long time. Not long enough." His forehead pressed against hers. "I want to wake up next to you every morning. Want to come home to you every night. Want to build a life where we're both happy and whole. I don't know exactly what that looks like yet, but I know I want it with you." Elena kissed him, pouring everything she felt into it. Fear and hope and love and determination. "Then we build it," she whispered against his lips. "Together, one day at a time." 3 months later, Elena sat in her office at Morrison & Associates, reviewing a contract in Russian for a client's acquisition of a manufacturing plant. The work was challenging, engaging, exactly what she'd hoped for. Her salary had already changed her life. She'd paid off debt, fixed her apartment's heating, even started saving. But more than that, she'd found purpose. The literacy center had become her passion, teaching adults who reminded her of her grandmother. Her Russian had gotten even better from practice, and several of her students had successfully passed their citizenship tests. Her phone buzzed. A text from Dante. "Dinner tonight? Have something important to discuss." Elena smiled, typing back. "Your place or mine?" "Mine. 7 p.m. Dress nice." Interesting. Dante only specified dress code when something significant was happening. That evening, Elena arrived at the Brooklyn Heights townhouse, wearing a deep blue dress she'd bought with her own money. Dante met her at the door, looking devastating in a black suit. "You look incredible," he said, kissing her softly. "You said to dress nice. What's the occasion?" "I'll show you." He led her to the dining room, where a table had been set, for two with candles and flowers. But it was the painting on the wall that made Elena stop breathing. It was her portrait finished now, absolutely perfect. Her eyes captured exactly right, shifting between gray and green, her expression both peaceful and determined. "You finished it," she whispered. "This afternoon." Dante stood beside her. "It belongs here, Elena. You belong here." She turned to him, confused. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I don't want you to just visit anymore. I want this to be our home, yours and mine." He took her hands. "Move in with me, not because you're in danger or because you need protection, because we're building a life together, and I want you here. Always." Elena's heart hammered. "Dante, Before you answer, I need to tell you something. He guided her to the couch, sitting close. I've been meeting with my lawyers, with financial advisors, with people who specialize in transitioning from, let's call it complicated business, to legitimate operations. It's going to take 3 to 5 years, but I'm doing it, gradually moving everything to legal enterprises. Real estate development, import-export, that's actually just import-export, investments. You're leaving the family business? I'm evolving it. Vincent is furious. A few of the old guard are threatening to leave, but most of the family understands that times change. We need to change too. His eyes held hers. I'm doing this for us, Elena, because I want a future where you don't have to worry about late-night calls or dangerous retaliation, where we can build something clean. Tears spilled down her cheeks. That's a huge sacrifice. It's not a sacrifice if I'm gaining something better. He cupped her face, wiping away tears with his thumbs. You showed me that there's more to life than power and control. That art and literature and teaching immigrants English matter more than territory disputes. That love is worth more than fear. I want that life. Elena. With you. Yes. The word came out, choked with emotion. Yes. I'll move in. Yes. I want to build this future with you. Yes. To all of it. When Dante kissed her, it felt like coming home. They spent the evening talking about logistics, what furniture she'd bring from her apartment, how to combine their lives, when to make the move. But beneath the practical discussions was joy, pure and simple. 3 months ago, Elena had walked into a laundromat at 2 a.m, desperate for $40 to survive another week. She'd helped a stranger, made a choice that should have been disastrous, and instead found love. Not easy love, not safe love, but real love, with a man who was learning to be better because she made him want to be. 2 weeks later, Elena officially moved into the Brooklyn Heights townhouse. Her shabby furniture looked out of place next to Dante's expensive pieces, but he insisted on keeping her worn couch because it's part of your story. The apartment in Sunset Park was sublet to a young couple from Colombia. Elena visited once to hand over the keys, looking around the cramped space that had been her entire world, feeling both nostalgic and relieved. You ready? Dante asked from the doorway. Yeah. She took his hand. Let's go home. Home. The word still felt strange but right. At the literacy center that Thursday, Elena's student Yulia, a Ukrainian woman who'd fled war and arrived in New York with nothing, finally finished reading an entire paragraph without help. I did it. Yulia's face lit up. I read English. Elena hugged her, remembering her own grandmother's determination to build a new life in America. You did it. I'm so proud of you. After class, Sarah Chen pulled Elena aside. I wanted to tell you we're opening a second location in Brighton Beach, heavily Russian-speaking population there. Would you be interested in coordinating the program? It would be paid, 20 hours a week, plus your volunteer work. Paid? Elena's eyes widened. $15 an hour. It's not much, but it's perfect. Elena smiled. I'd love to do it. Another door opening, another piece of the future falling into place. That night, she told Dante about the opportunity over dinner in their kitchen. He listened with genuine interest, asking questions about the program structure and the students' needs. I'm proud of you, he said. This is exactly what you're meant to be doing, helping people find their words, says the man who paints his feelings because words aren't enough. She smiled. We all have our methods. He reached across the table, taking her hand. Elena, there's something else I wanted to discuss. That sounds ominous. Not ominous, just... He paused, seeming uncharacteristically nervous. How would you feel about meeting my father? Elena's stomach dropped. Your father who built the family empire through violence and control? That's the one. Dante's expression was complicated. He's in prison upstate, serving 20 years for racketeering. We haven't spoken in 5 years since I took over and started doing things differently than he wanted. But recently he's been writing, asking to meet the woman who's corrupted his legacy. Corrupted? His words, not mine. Dante squeezed her hand. I want you to meet him because he's still my father, despite everything. And because I want him to see what I'm building. Not the business empire, the life, the future. I want him to understand that his way isn't the only way. Elena considered this. Meeting the man who'd shaped Dante into the complicated person he was seemed both terrifying and necessary. Okay, she said finally. When? Next weekend, if you're sure. I'm sure. The prison visit was as difficult as Elena expected. Dante's father, Carlo Caruso, was in his 70s but still radiated authority. He studied Elena with cold eyes, clearly unimpressed. "So you're the translator," he said in Italian, making no effort to speak English. Elena responded in fluent Italian. "I am, and you're the father who taught your son that power matters more than happiness." Surprise flickered across Carlo's face. Dante tensed beside her. "My son was weak," Carlo said. "Artistic, emotional, too much like his mother. I made him strong. You made him afraid," Elena countered. "Afraid to feel, afraid to create, afraid to be anything except what you demanded. But he broke free of that. He's become someone better than you could have imagined." Carlo's eyes narrowed. "Better?" "He's dismantling everything I built. Transitioning to legitimate business, making deals instead of taking territory, falling in love like some civilian. That's weakness, not strength." "No," Dante spoke up, his voice firm. "That's evolution. Your way kept us in constant war, constant danger, constant looking over our shoulders. My way builds something that lasts, something I can be proud of. You'll be destroyed," Carlo said flatly. "The families will see weakness and move against you. Then I'll handle it. On my terms, not yours." Dante stood. "I didn't come here for your approval, Papa. I came here to show you that there's another way. That love and art and building something legitimate doesn't make me weak. It makes me whole. And if you can't understand that, then we have nothing more to discuss." He took Elena's hand, guiding her toward the door. "Dante," Carlo called out. "She won't survive your world. Girls like her never do." Dante turned back, his expression cold. "Then I'll change my world until it's one where she can thrive. Because she's worth more than your empire ever was." They left without another word. In the car, Dante was silent for a long time. Finally, he spoke. "Thank you for coming. And for standing up to him. Did you mean what you said? About changing your world for me?" "Every word." He glanced at her. "My father built an empire on fear. I want to build one on something better. It won't be easy, and it won't be quick. But it's possible. We prove that every day." Elena leaned over, kissing his cheek. "Then let's keep proving it." 6 months after Elena moved in, Dante finished his first major legitimate deal, a real estate development in Lower Manhattan. Completely legal, no complicated business in the shadows. The project would provide affordable housing for working families, with commercial space on the ground floor for small businesses. "It's not as profitable as the old way," he admitted over celebratory dinner. "But it's clean, and I can tell Aunt Maria about it without lying." "I'm proud of you," Elena said. That night, Dante led her to the art studio. A new painting waited a cityscape of New York, but softer than his usual work. Less hard edges, more light. In the corner, barely visible, 2 figures walked hand in hand through Brooklyn Heights. "That's us," Elena breathed. "That's us," Dante confirmed. "Building a future that's complicated and messy and absolutely worth it." Elena turned to him, this man who'd disrupted her life and transformed it into something she'd never imagined. "I love you, Dante Caruso. Every complicated, impossible part of you." "I love you too, Elena Volkov." He pulled her close. "Thank you for seeing me. The real me. Not the reputation or the power. Just me. Just you is more than enough." They stood in the studio, surrounded by paintings that captured beauty and violence, hope and chaos, love in the most unlikely places. Outside, New York hummed with its constant rhythm. Danger still existed, complications remained, and the future wasn't guaranteed, but they had each other, and that made anything possible. Elena had needed $1,500 and walked into a world she didn't understand. She'd found a man who was learning to be better because she made him want to be. A man who painted her eyes perfectly, who supported her dreams, who chose her over easier paths. The poor translator had no idea the man she'd helped was a mafia boss who would never let her go. But she'd figured it out, and she'd chosen to stay anyway. Because love wasn't about safety or certainty. It was about finding someone worth the risk, and deciding they were worth everything. Dante Caruso was worth everything, and Elena Volkov had finally found where she belonged. The gallery opening in Chelsea was packed with people Elena would never have imagined knowing 2 years ago. Art collectors in expensive suits, socialites with champagne flutes, critics with sharp eyes and sharper opinions. But she moved through the crowd with confidence now, her emerald dress elegant without being ostentatious, her hand steady as she greeted guests. Because this wasn't just any gallery opening. This was Dante's first public exhibition. Mrs. Caruso. A woman approached, middle-aged with kind eyes and a press badge. "I'm Rachel Moore from the Times. Could I ask you a few questions about your husband's work?" Mrs. Caruso. Elena still felt a thrill when people called her that. They'd married 6 months ago in a small ceremony at Aunt Maria's house, just family and close friends. No massive Italian wedding, no business associates turning it into a networking event. Just love and vows and Aunt Maria crying through the entire thing. "Of course," Elena said, smiling. "Your husband's transition from business to art has been remarkable. These paintings, they're vulnerable, emotional, completely contrary to his public image. What inspired him to go public with this part of himself?" Elena glanced across the gallery to where Dante stood, discussing a painting with a collector. He'd changed so much in 2 years. Still commanding, still powerful, but softer somehow. More willing to let people see beyond the carefully constructed walls. He realized that hiding who you are requires more energy than simply being authentic, Elena said carefully. These paintings have always been part of him. Now he's ready to share that with the world. And the proceeds going to literacy programs for immigrants, that was your influence? That was our shared value. I work with the New York Literacy Network. My husband supports the mission financially. It's a partnership. Elena's voice warmed. Art and language both give people tools to express themselves, to find their place in the world. We believe in making both accessible. Rachel made notes, nodding appreciatively. One more question. Your husband's business reputation has undergone significant scrutiny over the past 2 years. Federal investigations, questions about his past operations. How do you reconcile that with the man you married? Elena had expected this question. She'd prepared for it. I married a man who spent the last 2 years building something better than his past, who transitioned his family's operations to completely legitimate enterprises, who works with federal prosecutors to provide information about organized crime in exchange for immunity, who chooses transparency over secrecy whenever possible. She met Rachel's eyes. People are complicated. They make mistakes. They grow. They change. I married the man Dante is becoming, not the man he was. It was the truth. Dante's cooperation with federal investigators had caused shockwaves through the underworld. Vincent had left the family in fury, taking a handful of loyalists with him. But most of the organization had followed Dante's lead, transitioning to legal operations or taking generous severance packages to pursue other opportunities. The Caruso family was no longer a crime syndicate. It was a real estate development company, an import business that actually imported legal goods, and an investment firm. Boring, legitimate, clean. Dante had sacrificed his father's legacy to build something new. And Carlo Caruso, still in prison, still refused to speak to his son. But Aunt Maria was proud, and that mattered more. After the interview, Elena found Dante standing alone in front of his largest painting, the New York cityscape, with 2 figures walking through Brooklyn Heights, the one he'd painted 2 years ago when they'd first started building their future. "How are you holding up?" she asked, slipping her hand into his. "Terrified," he admitted quietly. "These paintings have been private for 25 years. Now strangers are analyzing them, critiquing them, assigning meaning I never intended. That's what art does. It stops being just yours the moment you share it." Elena squeezed his hand. "But they love it, Dante. Look around. 3 paintings already sold, and people are calling it brilliant. They're calling it surprisingly vulnerable and unexpectedly emotional, which are art critic ways of saying they didn't expect a former mob boss to have feelings." His mouth quirked in a self-deprecating smile. "But I suppose that's fair." Elena turned to face him fully. "I'm proud of you for doing this, for being brave enough to show the world who you really are. I learned from the best." He cupped her face, thumb brushing her cheekbone in that familiar gesture. "You walked into my world speaking 6 languages and refusing to be anyone except yourself. You taught me that authenticity is strength, not weakness." Before Elena could respond, a commotion near the entrance drew their attention. Marco, still Dante's head of security despite the legitimate business transition, was blocking someone's path. A man in an expensive suit, silver hair, cold eyes, Vincent Moretti, Dante's former advisor who'd left 2 years ago. "Let him in," Dante said quietly to Marco. Vincent approached slowly, his expression unreadable. He stopped a few feet away, studying Dante like he was seeing him for the first time. "I heard about the exhibition," Vincent said. Wanted to see for myself if the rumors were true. And? Dante's voice was neutral, giving nothing away. And you actually did it. Transitioned everything to legitimate operations. Cooperated with federal prosecutors. Married the translator. Vincent's jaw tightened. I thought you were destroying everything we'd built. Thought you'd gone soft and weak. You made that clear when you left. I was wrong. The admission seemed to cost Vincent physical pain. The families that stayed in the old ways, the Marchettis, the Russos, the Grecos, they're all under federal indictment now. Multiple counts, facing decades in prison. You saw the future, Dante. I didn't. I called you weak when you were being smart. Dante was quiet for a long moment. Why are you here, Vincent? To apologize. To you and to your wife. Vincent turned to Elena. I said terrible things about you. Treated you like you were disposable. I was wrong about you too. You didn't weaken Dante, you saved him from becoming his father. Elena felt Dante's hand tighten on hers. The wounds from Vincent's betrayal had run deep, but she also knew Dante well enough to recognize the conflict in his expression, anger warring with years of friendship. I accept your apology, Elena said when Dante remained silent. But whether Dante forgives you is his choice, not mine. Vincent nodded, understanding. He pulled an envelope from his jacket, handing it to Dante. I'm moving to California. Starting over. Trying to build something legitimate like you did. That's a letter of recommendation if you're willing to sign it. If not, I understand. Dante took the envelope, turning it over in his hands. You were my closest friend for 20 years. You stood beside me when I took over from my father. You helped me build an empire. His voice was thick with emotion. But you also tried to have Elena removed from my life. You valued tradition over loyalty to me. That's not something I can forget. I know. Vincent's shoulders sagged. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I was wrong. About everything. I'll read the letter, Dante said finally. And I'll think about it. That's all I can offer right now. That's more than I deserve. Vincent nodded to them both. Congratulations on the exhibition. The paintings are beautiful. Your mother would be proud. After Vincent left, Dante stood staring at the envelope, his expression complicated. Are you okay? Elena asked softly. I don't know. He pocketed the letter. Part of me wants to burn that recommendation. Part of me wants to help him because we were brothers once. I hate that he made me choose. You don't have to decide tonight. Elena wrapped her arms around his waist. Take your time. Feel what you need to feel. The answer will come. Dante pulled her close, burying his face in her hair. How did I get so lucky to find you? You didn't find me. I found you. In a laundromat at 2 a.m. because I needed money to survive. She smiled against his chest. Best $1,500 I ever earned. He laughed, the sound genuine and warm. Best $1,500 I ever spent. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of congratulations and sales. By the time the gallery closed at 11, 7 paintings had sold for amounts that made Elena's head spin. Dante donated every cent to the Literacy Network, funding their expansion into 3 new neighborhoods. They walked home through Chelsea, hand in hand, Marco following at a discreet distance. The October air was crisp, reminding Elena of that night 2 years ago, when everything had changed. Do you ever regret it? Elena asked suddenly. Giving up the power, the empire your father built, everything you were raised to value? Dante stopped walking, turning to face her under a streetlight. Not for a single second. Elena, I spent 34 years building walls, hiding who I was, becoming what everyone else expected. You tore those walls down. You showed me that there's more to life than power and fear. His hands framed. Her face. I'd give up 100 empires for what we have. We have a townhouse, 2 cats, and a complicated history. We have a home. A real home where I can paint and you can teach, and we're building something that actually matters. He kissed her softly. We have love that's messy and complicated, and absolutely real. That's worth more than my father's entire legacy. They continued walking, and Elena thought about how far they'd both come. She'd gone from a translator scraping by in a 4th-floor walk-up to the director of the New York Literacy Network's Russian language program. She taught 20 hours a week, coordinated volunteers across 5 locations, and made enough money to donate to causes she cared about. Dante had gone from crime boss to legitimate businessman to artist. He still ran Caruso Development, but now it focused on affordable housing and community projects. He'd testified in 4 federal trials, helping prosecutors dismantle the old criminal networks. He'd become someone his mother would be proud of. They'd both transformed, together. At home, their cats Pushkin and Marquez, named for their favorite authors, greeted them with demanding meows. Elena fed them while Dante poured wine. They curled up on that worn couch from her old apartment, now sitting comfortably beside Dante's expensive furniture. "I love you," Elena said, resting her head on his shoulder. "Every complicated, artistic, reformed criminal part of you." "I love you too," Dante replied. "My brilliant, stubborn, perfect wife who saved me from myself." Outside, New York continued its endless rhythm. Inside, they'd found peace. The poor translator who'd needed $1,500 had found something worth infinitely more. A partner who chose growth over stagnation, love over fear, authenticity over image. And the Mafia boss who'd never let her go had learned that holding on to someone didn't mean imprisoning them. It meant building a life together where they both could flourish. 2 years ago, Elena had walked into a laundromat and changed both their lives forever. She'd do it again in a heartbeat. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you loved this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.